So funny, every time I tell people from America I'm from Canada, especially on stage, immediately, how's it going there,
You want a war? Or do you want to just give me a war?
There's a new NBA champion, and it's a team from Toronto, Canada. Oh!
This is the Prosciutto Masala Podcast.
Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Prosciutto Masala. I have a good friend and a special guest with us here today. I'm really excited. My buddy and fellow business owner, Jacques Bryuns. Jacques, thanks for being on the episode, buddy.
Hey, how's it going?
Good, man. So, yeah, tell everybody a little bit about, I guess, you, your background, I guess, first in terms of kind of your upbringing. I know you have a cool background. You're kind of part South African. I know you got a little bit of Italian in you. So tell people maybe a little bit about you, your upbringing, and yeah, kind of how you ended up here. I guess I know you were born in GTA, but I know you're probably your pops immigrated over like a lot of our parents and grandparents did, right?
Yeah, that's correct. My parents came from South Africa to leave apartheid when it was in full swing in the 70s. South Africa is like a melting pot of culture. My background on the one side goes up to Italian, the other side, Filipino, Austrian, and I believe Russian, and a little bit of everything. Anyways, my parents came here to, as I was saying, to avoid the bullshit of they didn't want to raise me in the apartheid system, and I'm glad they did. And so they came here. And then my family that all immigrated here, they were mostly tradespeople. And when I was a kid, I used to hang out with my uncles and my dad and whatnot. And I grew up around a lot of carpentry and a lot of mechanics. And then, but I decided to pursue a career. I've always had an interest in art. And then I pursued a career eventually that turned into computer animation. I did that for about 20-something years, and then realized the white-collar setting isn't for me. And then I had a kid and moved out to, I moved out from Oakville area to Bowmanville to be close to her. And then kind of hit some hardship and started installing awnings on the side just to keep my sanity. I was making like less than $10. I was making about $10.75 about 7 years ago, which was at the time the minimum wage was $13, and I was actually making less for it. And I was in between jobs in animation, and the drought got a little long. And then I kind of told my current business owner at that time, a good friend of mine named Bet at Some Like It Hot, and I asked her if I could get more money and work full time. And she declined that, and then so I told her I had to go look for other awning work, and I was told good luck in that. And then within a year, I had an established business with doing over 100 to 150 jobs a year. It was quite amazing. The first season I did it, I went from broke to making $30,000 in 3 months. And then I realized that I was onto something. At the time, I was also trying to invent a smart headboard and bring it to the market. And I was that was my first priority, but the money from awnings was just in my face. And my trade skills from my youth came into play. And I just decided that I started installing for other dealers. And I knew eventually I want to sell it. But my game plan was to learn as much as I can from installations and watching other dealers and how they make their mistakes, and did that for a couple of years. And I've seen a lot of mistakes and then a lot of screw ups. I repeated sometimes with different dealers, definitely, especially blind people that come into the awning industry thinking that they're going to capitalize on it. Good for them. It's just the only problem is it'd be better for an awning person to go into the blind than the other way around, because there's just more an awning installation is more of an exterior renovation. A blind is more of cosmetic installation inside. So I just kept focusing on becoming a better installer, and I had a lot of really good trade people to fall back on when I first started. I worked with a guy who passed away who was installing awnings for about 20 years, and so what I did was I worked for him for a summer, and then when I realized it was for me, I decided to find my own work, and I had him initially. I hired him just to come to my job site, mostly to deliver awnings, because at the beginning I was hauling awnings with the Pontiac Vibe, and I used to smash a few windshields. And then eventually what I did was I had him, the game plan was to have him on site so that that's like the answer in the back of the book. I always did what I could to figure things out on my own. And then if I ever had any doubt, I would ask him, and he would be more like a supervising role. And then once I realized that the way I was solving it is the way he solved it, I let him go. And then, I started pounding the pavement with black and white flyers, and because I was really broke. And then that led in, and then put free ads on Kijiji. And then my landlady at the time, which was from Some Like It Hot, I was also doing her trade shows. And what would happen was wherever I could, I'd network. And at a trade show, I met somebody at Lifestyle Home Products, and then I became one of their awning installers. And then when I was pounding the pavement on Kijiji, that led into installing awnings for Costco, and now I'm one of their main installers. I have been for a couple of years. And then another one was Canadian Shade, where I was doing service calls I was putting ads on Kijiji, getting a few jobs, and then I would go to the manufacturer. I'd put my black and white flyers at the front desk, and that connected me with Chris at Canadian Shade. And then my name was given out by the manufacturers for other dealers. And I had a couple of dealers come and go, but I've always had a decent knack at finding a B2B business.
Yeah, one thing I respect about you, buddy, and I think that's why we get along so well, is you find a way, man, to make it work. You hustle, and you taught me a lot about awnings, and you and Chris both kind of got me into the awning world. But I always joke with you. You're kind of like my Obi-Wan, and I'm kind of like the Luke Skywalker. You kind of taught me a lot about awnings, and I have you to thanks for a lot of the skills I have today. So I appreciate it, and I respect your hustle.
I've seen a lot of people come and shadow me. You were one of the first to come and shadow me, but actually seemed to have the right attitude. You just, as we know, when you first came work for me, you were my helper. You followed the shadow even with your own business, and then we worked. It didn't take very long, and I compensated you accordingly to your skill set. And I saw within, I think it was almost took you like 1-2 years, you were on your own. And then we were working out the budget for the whole install. So a lot of that is on you. You figured it out. So, but I've always admired your tenacity. You never give up either. So, I just, now I'm at the stage where I'm bringing my computer graphic skills into play. I really connect. I don't know why, with the TikTok platform.
Yeah.
And so I'm gearing up my page, my TikTok page, and I'm
You
going to
got to send me
be.
your links after. I'll put your links in the show notes so everybody can check out your TikTok and the website and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah, and then the other thing is that I don't know why, but somewhere along the lines, I start driving by construction sites, and then my interest from awnings, I wanted to know more about what I was installing into. And then one winter, I went to work on a framing crew, and basically, got slaughtered on site in the sense of the crew I was working for was, they weren't the type of crew to be working for. They didn't have any patience, and I came onto the site. There's one thing about construction, it's cutthroat, and you need to know your game. And to a degree, I understand going to a job site Anyways, I went to a job site working for people saying, "Hey, I didn't understand housing, but I have my business,"
Yeah.
and it was just not it was bullshit.
Yeah.
It was just the screaming and the yelling, and I didn't care much for it. And then, so my next plan was eventually I hired a framer, and I had the framer work for me, and we had the deal that during the summer we were going to do my jobs, and then in the winter we were going to do his jobs. And then quickly I found out that the way to go for hiring helpers is trade people. They're easier to trade, especially framers. They're just
Yeah.
super easy to train. Then, but what happened with that guy is when we did his job, kind of screwed me over a job. We built a carport, and it was very great experience. Good guy, good teacher, just bad business person. And I learned there from that also that in traditional construction trades, there's still people who know the skill, but they lack the business savvy.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
that's where I got a bit of strength, because like both my parents were entrepreneurs. So, and then plus my landlady who didn't want to let me work for more money, she actually became a really good mentor. And then I met my associates like you and Chris, and it doesn't hurt to be able to compare notes. But I'd say I get to see a lot of different dealers and the way they run their businesses, but I really have a lot of respect for Chris at Canadian Shade and my landlady Beth Hennessy.
Mm-hmm.
They're both um, they're both like I say masters in their own right. Bet's been
Yeah. Yeah.
around. She's a very old school lady. She's been around for 20 something years, and she knows she's been around, seen a lot. Where Chris is a newbie, but he's got like a lot of energy, and
Yeah.
he's a sales force. He's quite something in that department.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it's always interesting to see new school versus old school,
Yeah.
and how I'm modeling mine. And my model would be more off a bet because I'm more that's the artist in me. I'm not doing it for money. I'm doing it for time. I just would rather do my installs that my jobs, make enough money and do it in a quality way that I have more time off in a week than just kind of you know
Yeah.
bang 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 bang. I don't know. It's just me. And so
Yeah.
anyways, this one last thing is that, as I was saying, after I left that framing job, after I let go of that framing guy, my interest for construction kept growing. And then last fall, I just randomly decided to go back to school for construction at Durham College, doing
Mm-hmm.
construction technician, which is pretty close to Red Seal. With the amount of stuff we're learning is insane. And I'm literally learning how to build a house and how to cost it out.
Mm-hmm.
and and I just found out at the other day that I'm on the honor roll, and not that it means anything to me in a sense. It's nice to see my hard work come into play, but it's interesting to go from focusing on making money to focusing on getting good grades. And the only reason I'm focusing on getting good grades is because I want it to save me money when I'm on a job site.
Oh, absolutely. And you're learning a lot. Like, I mean, over the years, I've tried to always surround myself with different people that have different skill sets, and you learn, you pick up things. But I think even from the conversations we have, like offline, it's like you're learning a lot about building. And I think this is going to transfer obviously very well to like awnings, but also too, if you want to get into home building or renovations, I think it's just great general knowledge to essentially have. And I think the sad thing is that a lot of young people don't think about going into the trades, and they think, oh, like, I'm not going to make money in this and it's blue collar. But like, if I was to go back, man, and do university all over again, I wouldn't go to school for advertising. I think like it did teach me some, and okay, I got a little bit of sales experience, and I think that helped me now, like running my business. But I think if people knew, like, for example, about awnings and stuff and about different industries that you can make just as much, if not more money than a lawyer, I think people would consider going to trades more and not look at as down on it. But I think that's slowly changing because as more and more people are going to school for these fancy careers, doctors, lawyers, there's going to be more and more people that don't know how to use tools and work with their hands, and you're going to be, I think, more and more demand of them. So I think it's a good thing you're doing this.
The thing is, you had a good point. Okay, so I went to school for animation and then computer. I've always had an interest in computers, even like back in the 90s. And
Yeah,
I've literally watched the evolution pioneer, and I was part of it. But the thing is that, I was I was encouraged. Um, I got a really strong single mom that raised me to follow what I love and pursue it.
yeah,
And I thought it was, yeah, I still have decent art skills. It's just that, the problem is, and I think I realized this with listening to Robert Kiyosaki, is just that when you follow what you love, your love becomes a job. And there's like nobody tells you about this. It's nice to go to work and lose yourself in it and then get paid for it. But work should be work. Work shouldn't be. When I was in animation, they'd made ridiculous deadlines. You go home, you're thinking about it, you're stressing over it on the weekend.
yeah,
When I go do a job, it's an installation. I do it. You do it. You do your best to take your pride in it. But for the most part, it's it's just cut and dry.
yeah,
And there's when you're making money in life, sometimes it should be like that. Now, the only thing I don't like when I was younger, the reason also I avoided trades was a lot of it was the mentality of the laborers, because I call it artificial intelligence. People have this intelligence that or think they have intelligence because they might not be educated, but they don't go to school, they drop out of school, they become alcoholics, and then they have no other thing to do but to fall into a laborer type of position, and then
yeah.
they become really good at it,
Uh-huh.
and then they think that they're smarter than people that go to school. Well, yes and no. They may be smart in the sense that they know their trades, but usually their social skills suck. They don't know how to talk to people. They don't know how to run businesses. They scream and yell, and it's like there's a lot of abuse that goes on a construction site that's accepted, and that's changing with more people going back to school for trades.
Yeah,
And in all my honest opinion, that we need to fade out all the uneducated people that that have this artificial intelligence, because it's just a lot of this behavior that they do in the job site. It's not accepted in a job office.
for sure.
And
Yeah,
I'm even when I'm going to the school, and even we have a shop, and it's like a big shop, and we're actually building a residential home. We're framing, it's so big you can even, one corner of it, we're framing a house. And we have like these classes, and you have the shop teacher screaming and yelling at you like you're in the job force. Like, that shit's got to stop. you
yeah,
know
yeah,
i i i find that there's no excuse for that, because
yeah.
I run a business, and I'm running different crews sometimes, and I don't let it get to me.
Uh-huh.
And I also find that it's a small thing. I know we work together, and nothing pleases me more than when I work with people, and we're all different levels of experience, but there's a lot of tools they don't teach you on how to communicate. Like, please and thank you goes a hell of a long way. Like, even if you always find a way to say please and thank you and have patience with people.
Yeah,
And
I think
then
sorry
I
to
just
interrupt
find,
you. Go ahead, go
sorry,
ahead,
I just
sorry.
I was just gonna say, I find, like, when all of a sudden, like, say when I'm working with you, and then all of a sudden you're saying please and thank you to me and showing me the equal level of respect, it just makes the job site much more enjoyable. And yes, there are gonna be times where people fuck up. You know, I that's I don't. Everybody's got to learn one way, and when somebody
Yeah,
fucks
yeah.
up, you have to decide, well, I can lose my shit on this person, or I can say,
Yeah,
well, we all make mistakes, and
yeah,
just remember
yeah,
this mistakes. And then, after the third mistake, the next time you're coming to my job site, you're going to fix it for free,
yeah,
right? Or
yeah,
I try to work with it. I'm not a greedy asshole, but
yeah,
sometimes I try to I want people to learn,
yeah.
right?
I
And
think you're absolutely right. I think there's some things like I found. similar to like being a leader. And when you're like, and for me, I relate what you're saying to the coaches I had growing up, that were good basketball coaches and bad basketball coaches. And I found the bad coaches were always like, you screwed up, you missed a layup. It's like, what the fuck you doing? What the hell? Blah, blah. And it's like, you're not trying to miss a shot. You know what I mean? You're doing the best you can. If it's something where it's like you're making the same mistake over and over, okay, you take the person aside. But I found I always played the best when coach was supportive. But then if he didn't like something I did, he took me aside after the game in private and said, hey, listen, try to do this different or try to do this different. I think the same is with like a job site where unfortunately there's a lot of like old school, boomer mentality where it's like, oh, you got to embarrass the guy or you got to put him down and this. And it's like, listen, there's a time to get mad. There's a time to get angry. But I think most of the time I adopt the thought that you get more bees with honey. And when you're respectful and polite to people, you get more out of people. And I think me and you both kind of run our job sites that way. And unfortunately, a lot of old school guys don't. They just think, oh, like you got to kick them in the ass. And yes, there's a time to be kicked in the butt. And there's a time to have a stern discussion. But I think if you constantly maintain that thing of respect, and I agree with you, I think that needs to happen a bit more in the trades because a lot of job sites, people are just like putting their junior guys down or putting their laborers down. And you're not going to get the best and most loyal workers if you continue to do that, right?
I heard there's two sayings. One I got from my uncle, who's also a great tradesperson and runs a business, and another one I made up because I used to fight a lot. When I was a kid, I was kind of stupid. But the first one from my uncle was "cool heads prevail," and then the other one I learned is when you lose it, you lost it. There are ways to deal with your anger. Sometimes we're human and we're gonna explode. And that's okay as long as you learn how to manage the aftermath. But they always keep talking about how hard it is to find labor. It's not really hard if you pay people well and you treat them right. You got to, when you're running a business, you need to invest into people. It means maybe paying a little bit more and being a little courteous. And and if somebody's really being a pain in your system, you don't need to get rid of them in a negative, like in a horrible way. You just kindly fade them out.
Yeah.
Right. And it's nothing personal, because sometimes when people become a liability to your business, it's nothing personal. You got to think, because our job as a proprietor of a business, especially now that I'm taking construction, is the safety of our workers. And something happened to them, it's on us.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I kind of learned that a lot from Chris, our buddy there at Canadian Shade. And I think we're both sometimes like, similar in the sense that like, some customers are just like, quote unquote site foremans, as we call them, and we're doing a job and they're nitpicking, they're watching our every move. And it's like, customers, I think a lot of customers, or even if potential customers are listening, like if you're hiring somebody to do a job, you got to trust them to do that job. If you're sitting there watching their every move, you're going to you're not going to create a good environment. Like if you hire a lawyer to work on some paperwork for you, you're not going to go to his office and be like, oh, I want to see, I'm going to watch you as you type up every word on this report, or your accountant, right? It's like, but people with tradespeople want to do that. And I think it's like, listen, if you don't trust the tradesperson, I understand there's bad tradespeople out there, whatever, but then, the have a conversation with them beforehand. Say, hey, listen, this is what I'm concerned about because I've been screwed over by another contractor. I'm worried about A, B, C, D. You can address that. But if you're there, we've had customers where they're there outside watching us for the 2 hours that we're installing. And it's like, that's not the best environment, right? So with Chris, sometimes I just want to you want to rip a customer's head off and you want to kind of tell them off. But I've learned to kind of take a step back and just be calm. And you're absolutely right. Calmer heads prevail. And I think when I'm calm and I just take a moment to kind of digest things, and sometimes my immediate reaction, whether it's, my personal life or with business or whatever, is to kind of, you want to just like lose it, is to take 10 minutes, digest the information, let it calm, and then calmly talk to the customer or calmly talk to your partner or whatever it is. it what's the word I'm looking for? It ends up in a better outcome. You know what I mean? And Chris kind of taught me a lot of that, and I found business has gone a lot smoother for me because of that.
There's one thing I don't practice enough is okay, so I'm hearing impaired, and so sometimes when I really need to focus on a conversation, I'll close my eyes and I'll just focus on my hearing.
Yeah,
And sometimes I find in a hostile situation, that's really for me a good thing to do um, because there's listening and then there's listening,
yeah,
right? So when I find if I'm interacting and I'm angry and I have the visual of another anger, there's somebody's face I just don't want to see. When I close out the visuals and I focus on the conversation, that's all I'm focusing on. And
yeah,
so when I'm focusing on the conversation, what I'm looking for is trying to hear what I'm hearing. So like they're saying a sentence. Why are they saying that sentence? And
yeah,
most of the time, actually, to be honest with you, yes, there are people out there, they got issues. They just got issues. And it's a business transaction. So at the end of the day, the transaction is that they're giving you money and they have a certain expectation, right?
yeah.
So, I find that when you know when I've had issues, and people don't listen when I say I've done over 1,000 jobs, right? So when you do over 1,000 jobs, like I know Chris has done more, but I'm just saying installation wise, because the Canadian Shade, their volume, my volume is pretty decent too. But the point is that you start to see patterns. You start to see patterns in people's behavior. You start to see it before it even hits before shit even hits the ceiling,
Yeah,
right? So sometimes, like, I'll go on the job site, and I call it the baby bottle, but basically it's a pacifier.
yeah,
There's certain things that you do to pacify the situation. Like if you're doing a job and you see, you know, that say brick install, and you're installing on brick, and there's holes on the veneer that you didn't make, but your awning is in line with it. You just fill it in. You
yeah,
don't
yeah.
you just do it, and then the customer will come out, and I'll point to them before they can even, because I'm anticipating what they're going to say, and so I try to get it beforehand, and I call that, and then I'm pretty straight. I said, look, man, I did this for you, I did this, I did it, and they go, oh, thank you, and I'll just stay straight. No, I didn't do it for the thanks. I just didn't because I didn't want to hear the crying, because
Uh-huh.
and sometimes I find there also with the way I talk to you, some people will argue that I'm not mindful enough in how I interact with the customer. And I find personally, I've been doing it long enough, I found people, they want a leader on their site. They want
Mhm.
somebody confident on their site. And, you don't have to be a dick, but I find that, there are some places when you're interacting with the customer, you need to be real, right? The
Mhm.
best real you can be, right? Because, a lot of times what happens in home improvement is you have a salesperson come up, and the salesperson, yeah, is actually focusing on the sale. And most of the time, salespeople don't have installation experience. And, they come to a job site, they quote something, and the customer can feel it. The customer can feel they're being jived, and they want to speak to the installer.
Mhm.
And, and the reason why they want to speak to the installer is because most of the time the installer doesn't care. They just want to do a good job, and they'll say it straight,
Mhm.
right? So, and I just find that's good business.
I agree with you. I agree with you. Is there anything you would say on that note in terms of like customers that you can, because I think a lot of customers just think about, oh, I need this job done, but I'm not thinking about, the installer. What would you say to the like any potential customers for you to make the job easier? Like, is there something you would kind of say like, hey, listen, keep this in mind so that, the job can be smooth? Obviously, one thing we always talk about is like, some customers get it. Like they kind of, we talk to them about the install, they go inside. Most customers are great, right? But then there's some customers that like I've had this, and I know you've had this, where they get a lawn chair and they sit there for 2 hours, and with a bag of popcorn, and they're watching you install, right? And I'll just kind of say to that, I think we both use it. It's like, hey, listen, Mr. Business customer, I'm sorry. My insurance doesn't cover any damage that happens, and we only people that are insured are allowed in the work area because it's very dangerous. So we just ask you if you can go inside, and then you're happy to come back out when the job's done or whatever. So when you have to say that to people, you do. But anything else like that, you would say to potential customers that kind of help the job go smoothly.
Yeah. Well, first and foremost, there's a lot of there's actually, truthfully speaking, legalities. One of this in this course that I'm taking a 2-year construction course. It's very intensive. They cover everything. The first semester is and they tier it, so you're learning tier by tier, upgrade by upgrade. Before in the first semester, one course is list on safety,
Okay.
everything safety, everything from understanding, I think it's Ontario, the OSSA, something like that, Occupational Health Safety Act, which is a law. Okay. And then you got WSIB, and then they talk, one of the things they talk about is job safety assessments. Okay. So before I go in there, you're a customer. I get it. You're a customer. And one of my things, it's all about learning how to get your own feel. Right. Now, I never argue with the customer. My biggest kryptonite is when they say, I spent a lot of money for this. And, when I hear that, it's like, yeah, you did spend a lot of money for it. You should. But the thing is that you can't really do anything if they're insecure. They're going to, for whatever reason, but when I call them property foremen, when they want to do property foreman, I see them a mile away. I put my foot down, because in actual fact now, what you're supposed to do when you go to a job is assess the hazards before you work. And when you're on a job site, and the other thing is that, being a contractor, as I've studied, is pretty serious, because if you think about it, one of the things I learned is, you got a policeman, a fireman, right, and a construction person. What do they have in common? We're all risking our lives doing hazardous things. Like, a fire person's going to the fire, a police person's putting themselves in harm's way with a violent person. They got, guns and shit that can, we're using tools like a circular saw that can cut your limbs off. Right? Yeah. We're on heights. We're doing hazardous work, right? Somebody can get injured, right? Just like in all the other fields. So we actually have to be on our game. That's why when we go to a job site, it's no different than the other professions I just meant. They have to be on their game, and so do we, right? And the problem is that people, if they're home, they don't see it as a job site, and that's what you got to explain to them. That's your home, but it's my job site. And so there are many liabilities that I have to consider. So no, you can't sit and watch. And, sometimes, you play it out. Sometimes you get a good feel for a customer. Sometimes, but it's understandable in the sense that, when you're not in trades and you see, for us, what, let's just say you look at a veneer of a house, an outside a house. What I now see is 2x4s framed with ply seasoning with the skin, and then either siding material or brick material, right? Materials that have costs that can be fixed, that can be put together. They see a big investment. They see, you cut into the house, they see thousands of dollars of repair. Well, there is truth to that, because, for us, for us, it still comes down to, this is what it costs to get the materials. It's just material and labor and technique, right? So, like I said, for a lot of people, their home is their biggest investment, is their place where they live, right? So, I can understand it to a degree, but you got to trust it. Like, to me, if you can't trust your gut, then you shouldn't be working with someone else, right? And in our business, if you got some handyman guy, and I hate to put down handyman people, but this is what I think of a handyman. And I know not every handyman, you get a handyman that's a retired construction worker, you get a handyman that, been around trades and just trying to, do something to make some money on the side, right? Then you get the handymans that are, flat ass broke and trying to hustle people, right? And, that's what their fear is, right?
Yeah.
But if you got a handyman and he says, right away, I have $1 million liability insurance, right there, that tells you he's serious, right? If you got a handyman and he's got an invoice with the title on it,
Yeah.
there's another thing, right? If you got a handyman that's saying, oh no, we could do cash, there's a red flag,
Yeah.
right? So,
And I talked about this too with Chris and other people before too, and just for like potential customers out there that are either looking to hire, any company, like compare apples to apples. And I think a lot of people, unfortunately, they compare apples to apples a lot of times when it comes to other products, like for example, a car, but they don't do it when it comes to as much as I'm seeing in contracting. For example, like if you go buy, we like our trucks, right? We need trucks for our work. If you see two identical trucks that look the same, but one truck is listed for 20,000, the other truck's listed for 5,000, you're going to scratch your head and say, okay, there must be something different here with the engine. There must be some problems with this truck that's cheaper. And you're going to compare apples to apples to make sure you get the best value. But a lot of times I find with contracting, people just say, okay, what's this bathroom rental cost? And we're quoting it at, for example, 10 to 15,000. And they say, oh, we're going to go with this other company that's going to do it for 6,000. And I say, listen, no problem. Go with who you want. But like, have you compared what they're giving you? Like, oh no, well, he says you can just get it done. And it's just funny how people don't, it's slowly changing. And like I said, I try to give, when I give detailed quotes for like for renovations, for example, I break down everything, because then I'm trying to change people's habits of just kind of just going with the lowest price. And not everybody's like that, right? There's some customers that get it, but I think a lot of people, it's a slow process where people will just like, see a quote that says bathroom renovation, 2 lines, and then the price, where mine is like 2 pages long of what we're doing, what we're not doing. Not only is it just good for the customer for them to compare apples to apples and make sure they're getting equal value, but it's also good for us because it covers our ass, right? To make sure that, hey, the customer thought that we were taking care of the mold behind the wall. Well, I clearly said in the invoice or the quote that we're not covering that. And I think that's where a lot of tradespeople, unfortunately, get a bad rap. I don't think there's definitely some bad tradespeople out there that are looking to take advantage of people. But I think more so what I see is just tradespeople are not great communicators in general. And they assume that the customer knows what's involved, right? They assume that, okay, if I'm quoting painting, for example, and this happened to me one time where I quoted painting for a customer and I went to go look at the job, and there was just a musty smell in the house, and it smelled that like it was very old. It was a century home. So I'm like, you know what? There might be mold behind these walls, but I don't know until we start doing it, right? And I start touching the walls or whatever. So I clearly said, this includes painting. This does not include if we find drywall damage or mold behind the wall. So sure enough, we started painting, and there was one small section that was like a little bit spongy, right? So I'm like, oh, that's not good. So we opened it up. Sure enough, there was a bit of mold behind there. So, and the customer though was understanding because we set those expectations from the beginning, versus another company that basically is like, and this customer told me like, thank you for stating that, because I would have thought that was just included. So a lot of customers just don't know what's involved in a renovation. So contractors need to kind of be very clear and break it down for them,
That relationship, the money exchange relationship, it goes 2 ways. Okay. When I used to be a 9-to-5er, and when I was looking for work for an animation, after a while, when I used to go to interviews, I was interviewing them just as much as they were interviewing me. They would come in, I think you start to, like in animation, what happens is it's an industry where it's mostly, it's feast or famine. If there's a lot, like you could, especially in film and TV, there has to be production going on. And if there's production going on, there's work. If there's no production going on, you're hungry and you're competing with other people for whatever jobs you can get. Anyway, so I used to start going to my job interview, and they would like, oh, like in that industry, feature film. Oh, we got feature film. You work on this, and then you can get cash shots for your demo reel. And you're like, when you're young and stupid, you're going, oh, and not realizing that that's going to mean instead of working 40-hour work weeks, you're going to be doing 60-hour work weeks, and you're going to literally be sleeping at your desk. It happens,
The
right?
cash
And
shots,
it's
is
like
that like
after a
money
while,
shots, like in porn, like cash shots?
yeah, like a cash shot would mean like when you see a trailer and you see that shot in the trailer and you go, oh, that's my shot, that's my cash shot, right? That's like
I was trying to be stupid. I was, how they in porn where they're like, oh, that's the money shot in porn. So I'm like, oh,
yeah,
cash
same
shot. Is
thing.
that your money shot? Okay.
Yeah, it's the same thing. So,
Okay, gotcha.
anyways, but the point is that after a while, you're like, for me, I would interview them, and I would be checking out. I would be asking them just as much as they'd be asking me, where you guys come from? Because a lot of these companies would come up. They would be, they. So what happens in that industry is it that just like we bid for jobs, the studios would bid for jobs too. So you could have a new studio that just started up, just a couple of guys that decided, hey, let's perform our own studios, and they find the channels to bid for jobs. And so what happens in Hollywood is they'll create a film, and they'll have a budget for effects, say for argument's sake, and then it's a money in some, depending on the production. They might say, we're going to do this production on a dime. We want to get it the most efficient way done. So they bid out. They'll have like the big studios doing their main shots, and they'll subcontract shots, right?
Interesting.
And so what they'll do is they'll subcontract. So now these studios they say, hey, they make an announcement and they say, hey, send us a test, and we want to see. And so they get all these people to spend all their resources to do a test on their stuff, and then if they're lucky, they get the bid, and then they get the bid, and so it's on their numbers and their skills. So you could get a studio that brand new and
Yeah.
gets the bid, right? And so
Okay.
then what happens is that now they go hire other people, and they do ridiculous deadlines because they have no experience in that realm, and then they shoot themselves in the foot, right? And then
Yeah.
so I'll come along, and then I'll be like, look at them, and then I'll be interviewed because they're like, oh, we need to get people. We need them yesterday. We got this big thing from Marvel,
Yeah.
right? And then you're not, you're not supposed to talk. They make you sign a non-disclosure and whatever. You're not supposed to talk about it until it's
Yeah.
out. Anyway, but it's a shit show. And then versus, say, you go on to another company that's maybe an established media company that's got smaller projects, not very glamorous, but maybe they have projects that you're doing, gaming projects online, or maybe you're going to be they have an established TV series, and they're looking for somebody to just do like menial work, like like there's stuff even with the jobs, like they'll be like, say, you could model the main character, you can model the main set, and you could rig, or you can animate, or you say, just give me all the little grunt work jobs, and easy, no stress over it, like building props and stuff, no major deadline, but they pay well. I would go for those jobs all day long, right?
Interesting.
It's like once you pass ego, it's just like, now when you're looking for a contract job, it's the same thing. I'm interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing me,
Yeah.
right? So there should be there, and then at the end of the day, what it comes down to is, can you do the job? And you need to be able to deliver that answer really quick. And usually you can answer that, really quick, just by showing them a picture,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Or just,
Hmm.
and it's also, if you don't have a picture and you're confident with yourself, you should always be able to say, you can feel the customer, because you feel customers, and you can see that, no, this one is just going to be too high maintenance.
For
And
sure.
so, and then you can decide whether it's a you'll know.
It's
And then
almost it's
you
almost
can
like
quote them,
dating,
you quote
right?
them high.
It's almost like dating. You got to kind of date your customers a bit too. And it's like, we both were at the point, I know, early on, where I was taking whatever business I could because you got to eat, right? But then you get to a point, once you're a bit more comfortable, you can kind of be a bit more selective, because it's like dating. The customers got to like us, and we got to like the customer. Otherwise, it's it's not a good thing.
Some
It's not
bus-
going to be a pleasant process, right?
Sometimes I heard I heard a buddy of mine from Lifestyle Home Products, and he said he's been running this business for a while. He says, in business, the toughest thing you can say is no. As no, thank you. You need to,
Yeah,
I
yeah,
can't help you. No, I'm going to pass.
yeah,
No,
yeah, yeah,
you
yeah,
know, it's that, because, you got to ask yourself too. Sometimes you could just be dodging a bullet. You'll know. And then
yeah,
sometimes,
yeah.
and then also when you do engage with a customer, yeah, you mentioned something there
Yeah.
about how you do your quotes. Now, as I was mentioning, I grew up with tradespeople, and my dad used to be an 18-wheeler trailer mechanic, and he used to work on the hydraulic beds,
Yeah, yeah,
air freights, and I'd hang out with him, and then he would show me how when he invoices, he would, and he had the old school, carbon copy one where you write on it and it leaves a copy, and he would detail everything,
good.
right? And it's
Yeah,
because he's slapping a big bill,
uh-huh.
and when you're slapping a big bill, people need to know what you did.
Yeah, for
Right?
sure.
Like if you're slapping a big bill and you're saying, hey, this is costing $2,000. Well, why is it $2,000? All you did was put that up. Well, no, I had to do this, I had to do that, I had to do this, I had to do that, and then put it up, and then after I put it up, I had to do this and I had to do that.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
that's where your $1,000
yeah.
comes from. And if you
It's
don't
funny.
like it, I understand, because I can go do this other job where I have to do less.
Yeah, it's interesting how, like, again, what I was talking about before with the dynamic of people when it comes to tradespeople versus like professional, I don't know if you, not blue collar, but what's the opposite? White collar, I guess, like lawyers and
Mm-hmm.
doctors and stuff, right? Where the mindset difference. If you pay a lawyer, for example, to do work on a prenup, for example, for your marriage or something like that, and they charge you an hour's worth of time, and it's like $500, you're like, people are kind of like, oh, okay, it's a lawyer, $500, that's fine. But when it comes to like I was talking to my cousin about this, who's an HVAC, and if you go in and you charge somebody, say, to fix their AC unit and like $300, and you're there for 10 minutes and you leave, they're like, oh, what the heck? It's only 10 minutes. I paid $300, but it's like, yeah, you're paying for the years and years of experience, as well as um the experience and the know-how, and the professionalism. And I listened to a podcast one time and it was talking about, okay, would you feel better then if I took twice as long to do this? And people start to think, and it's like, I should be rewarded the fact that I can do this quickly and efficiently. If you have another HVAC tech in here that takes 4 hours to do this, isn't it better I only take 10 minutes and 30 minutes because it's like I'm more experienced? So it's funny. We reward kind of efficiency and we reward experience when it comes to white collar work. But when it comes to blue collar work, people almost like they don't value it as much. And I think it's funny. My cousin would tell me, like, he would then learn that, okay, if something's like takes 10 minutes to do, he'd sometimes go in the truck, check a couple emails, come back, and then take a full half hour, an hour, and people would feel better about spending that money as opposed to just he did it in 10 minutes as it was in and out. And so it's funny, the mindset of people, right?
I think I told you this story. There's a story I learned about the king who had an engine that broke.
Okay.
And the king had an engine that broke, and then he put out an announcement to the town that his engine broke, and it's like a steam engine of some sort.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so he could bring it into the courtyard. And he made an announcement, and then he said, I'll give 1,000,000 coins for somebody who can fix this problem, fix my engine.
Mm-hmm.
And then this old guy comes comes for us, and he says, she's like looking, staring at it, nodding his head. And he goes, okay, I'll do it. And so he goes up to the machine, he pulls out one wrench and tightens one bolt, and then boom, it works. Right? And then he goes up to the king. He says, pay up. Where's my 1,000,000 coins? And of course, the king is like, yeah, but you were only on it for a thing, that's costing me 1,000,000 coins, and he goes, no. I said, it actually cost you 1 coin, but it cost me 99, whatever, 100,000 coins for all my mistakes.
And the man
So
hours that went into learning how to do that, right?
yeah,
Yeah.
you're paying for everything I've learned. So that's the point, right? That's where, you know, so in effect you only paid a coin. You're not, but I paid more, right?
Mhm.
So, and that's how that's how it works, So
100%.
but also
100%.
when people start to, you know, sometimes, like you mentioned with lawyers and stuff, I don't mind paying, a lawyer what a lawyer is supposed to get paid, because that's their profession, the same as ours. The bottom line is this, I know for fact, now that I'm, my bill can be compared to other people's bills, and my bill can be expensive,
Mhm.
right? But I look at my bill and I have the advantage of working for different dealers and seeing what they charge,
Yeah.
right? And I also, it comes down to how much are you willing to, for a customer, how much are they willing to invest to solve their problem,
Yep.
right? So you can go with someone else, but you got to ask yourself, like for me, I am that guy that will do a 4-hour install in 1 hour, right? It's like it's a brick, for example, and I'll
Yeah.
come in with the right crews, and the right fasteners, and boom, boom, boom. I'm out, right? And that's what you're paying for my efficiency.
Yeah.
You're paying for the fact that I will come to my job site. My truck is rigged a certain way. It's organized a certain way. The guys
Yeah.
I use have a certain. I don't have to talk to them. I have, double. Instead of having, one impact, I have two for each
Yeah.
guy. Instead of using a method of installation that takes longer, I know what installation will work that takes the fastest.
Yeah. You've
Right?
perfected your art. You're perfected. And it's no different than, I heard the analogy one time of like, think of like somebody like an artist, like, I don't know, Leonardo da Vinci versus a modern, say an artist that's just getting started. Let's say an artist that's maybe been doing it for maybe 6 months is pretty good, and let's say he can paint, um, it. Say he can, let's just say for argument's sake, he can paint the Mona Lisa to look exactly like Leonardo da Vinci, but it takes him like, say, I don't know, like 2 months to do it, but Leonardo da Vinci can do it in like 6 hours. So should we pay Leonardo da Vinci less just because he can do it in 6 hours, and the other guy, it takes him like 6 months, right? So you should be rewarded for your expertise. Absolutely.
There's another thing I learned from art school, with regards to, you said Leonardo da Vinci. I learned at school that, you know, in anything, it takes a while to perfect it, right?
Yeah,
And so they said, everybody sees Michelangelo's Sistine Chapel. No one sees his bad drawings.
absolutely.
So,
Absolutely. 100%.
everybody, even the great artists, they say in animation, classical animation, it takes 5 to 10 years to master it.
Yeah,
So,
absolutely. Absolutely. One thing I wanted to touch on, brother, because I think it'll be really interesting for people to hear, is about your experience, with animation, and what your experience was in that world, and how, and why you kind of left. Because I think you've told me before, but I think it's an interesting story. So maybe you can talk a bit about like your how you got into animation, your experience in that industry, and the pros and cons, and why you decided to leave.
okay. Well, as I was saying, when I was a kid in my 18s and 20s, I actually was very athletic, and I used to work out a lot. I used to train for triathlons and race in triathlons, and I spent a lot of time alone working out. And then you get a lot of clarity when you're working out in the country.
Hmm.
And I followed, and then I had this instinct to follow it, and then, but as I was saying, I also had this interest in art, and I didn't know what I wanted to do, but I just followed this interest in art simultaneously. And then, so that kind of led me to taking. I applied to a few of the best art schools. One of the best of them was, at the time, is Ontario College of Art, OCAD,
Uh-huh.
art and design. And I didn't get into there, but then I found out, oh, Sheridan College was having this 1-year art foundation. So at the time I decided to take that, and then somewhere along the lines with my training and going to school, I had to make a decision as to which way I wanted to go, because I was following my pursuit in what you call triathlon, and I love that too. I really had a passion for it,
Okay.
and so that led me to, I would meditate on what I should do, and then that kind of gave me um, an intuition to go take a job up north so I can train for races. The first time I did it, I worked at a kids camp, had no time to train. Second time I did it, I worked in a resort up in Killarney, Ontario, and I stayed there for 2 summers, and best summers of my life.
Cool.
I really like, there were moments when I was up there, I would be like, I took a job on a resort, so that's how I was making money and accommodations. And all my spare time was exercising and in nature. And there were times, even when I was doing my job cutting the grass, I just felt like so aligned with the universe, like this is what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I used to have the same feeling with computer animation, and I thought at the time I had a big passion for living in California,
Okay.
and I realized all of a sudden, oh, I can take animation, and I can end up getting a job there, right? So I started pursuing that, and Sheridan College is like Canadian animators. I don't know if it's the same, but Canadian animators are like Canadian hockey players around the world. We're recognized as one of the best.
Really interesting.
Oh yeah. Oh,
Interesting.
Canadian animators are like top notch, right?
Interesting.
And for a while, Sheridan College was only second, or if not, it was debatable, to another school called Cal Arts, California
Okay.
Arts, and those two schools at the time were the only schools that were producing animators for Disney and whatnot. And
Wow.
anyways,
Interesting.
so
Cool.
yeah, and then with the advent of technology, then other schools opened up. But there, in the industry, if you say you're from Sheridan, it's like saying you went to Harvard,
Wow.
right?
Cool.
Yeah, and then but I had a rough time getting through that program, and then I ended up going to other schools to get my certificates and qualifications, and then I had to find work. And when I was looking for work, it was hard at first because the industry was still like there was. I went into computer animation just before it really boomed. There was a time when all of a sudden, with the advent of internet and video games and computers, technology got eventually. I used to work on machines that were like literally a couple, like, $100,000, and the software was 10 grand. Now that same thing, that computer is like maybe 3 grand, and the software is licensed for $1,000 a year
Yeah.
or
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever, 2,000. It changed. But anyways, and then I went into the industry, and then you have to find a way. I had to learn the hard way to find work, and it wasn't always about your portfolio. What would happen is you'd find where the jobs is, leave your portfolio, and hope and pray.
Yeah.
And then I learned how to master getting a job, break the barrier, and in 2-3 weeks. And that took me a year to figure out. I finished schooling and then kept getting more schooling, and then I had a hard time thinking that, the more software I learned, the better chance I was going to have getting work. And anyways, it took me a while to break into the industry as a young man in my 20s. And then finally, when I did, I'd work my ass off in one job and then get laid off to go to another job. And then, it was always like the jobs were maybe 6 months to a year. And then, you're getting more stuff for in your portfolio. But then over time, you just started getting jaded.
So is this
And
kind of, just to interrupt you? Would this be kind of freelance, or you're working for kind of a studio and you get contracted by the studio?
well, you get contracted. At first, I would get contracted by studios, and you get like a year contract or two, and then up for renewal. But a lot of times, a lot of studios, they come and go. Even Disney came at one point to Toronto. They had a big place in Front Street, and
Oh,
everybody was
interesting.
all excited about Disney, and they didn't even last 2 years. They set up and then they shut down, right? And anyway, so when I always knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, and then I was always trying things on the side, always. I just had this interest. I knew and then at one point I was dating a woman who eventually became my daughter's mom, and she was an entrepreneur with the income property and a convenience store.
Mm-hmm.
And she kind of she started making me see things in a different way. And so I tried a little vending business with her while I was working, and then eventually we separated. And I tried an official vending business, and I learned a lot about business in that, but it wasn't a good business. And then I tried to do it full time, and I gave up animation. At that time, I was studying wherever I could. I was always listening to audio, self-help, business stuff. I just inhaled. My free time was always about studying business. And then that was about 2-3 years. And then eventually the business didn't work out. I was really, really, really broke. And then I fell back to animation. And then for a little while, like I said, then I started doing installs for awnings on the side. And then I realized in my journey with awning that I liked it, and that I liked just getting up, going to work, doing it, and finishing it, and
Yeah.
going home, getting paid.
Yeah.
And the aha moment, and it's like I said, and I just started realizing that, animation, just the lifestyle of it is, there's it's like nothing's perfect. You think you're going to go into a white collar office, you're going to and don't get me wrong, there were some days I looked forward to going to work. It was exciting. I would get to be very creative.
Yeah.
I wasn't, I didn't have to worry about, hurting myself physically on the job. I could literally come to work, have a cup of coffee, find my creative zone. And it was very, sometimes you get into something creative and you have a rough time pulling yourself away from your computer.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a double-edged sword too, because then sometimes you get too emotionally attached to your work.
Uh-huh.
Whereas in this business, I find I don't. Like, I want to give you the best work, but it's just work. And there is something there's a truth in that. Like, work should just be work.
Yeah.
And that's why I always try to encourage, and when I'm meeting other people, like, that want to consider trades, and I was like, that are like, oh, I need to, I'm getting a trade. It's like a bottom of the barrel, and no, it's not. If you treat it with the right attitude, it could be just as much as a respectable office job if you
Mm-hmm.
treat it with the right attitude.
Yeah, that's changing now. I think a lot of people um, are maybe not. I think that the general sentiment that I get when I talk to a lot of young people is that they're starting to consider that more. I think there's a lot of, unfortunately, brainwashing that takes place with the education system that, oh, if you go to university, you're going to make millions of dollars coming out of school. And if you go to a college, you're not. And me, having gone through university, and kind of when you're done, it's kind of like a little bit like they kick you out the door and it's like, hey, good luck. And it's like, well, you promised me the moon and the stars. You said I'd have, like, when I started university, they're like, oh, you're going to get lots of jobs and you're done. You're U of T, you'd be that was like the general kind of consensus. But when you're done, it's kind of like they don't really help you. And I had to remember I was working at Home Depot part time for a good 3 years to try and find a job in my industry. Finally, I got a job in advertising and then worked in that industry for a bit. But I think a lot of people now are realizing, okay, do I go to school for 4 or 5 years, get into $50,000 to $100,000 worth of debt, or do I go into a trade where I can actually make money and doing maybe a co-op as I'm working, and I finish school with a job and with little to no student debt? So I think people are maybe starting to realize that.
Well, you hit on something there. When I was in high school, this was this was just before the computers took off. I was actually, we had computers, but it was like like Commodore computers and VIC-20s, and anyways, there was Commodore PET, and there was just the way it was really, really old school, and then internet changed everything. Anyways, so, but yeah, they were fading out, and I loved shop, and then they were fading out shop, and they were trying to get everybody, they're prioritizing taking a typing course because everything's going to be on computers. And because before that, a man had a choice of a handful of trades that he was going to follow, and you hope that you find one. Now, the thing is that in all honesty, everybody should take some kind of trade if they have some kind of interest in some kind of trade, and then if they don't like the trade, go into something else. That's the better way, because with trades, even if you don't like working in it, even if you don't like, say you're a mechanic and you don't like working in the field, the ability to work on your own car in life is priceless. The ability, and then there's you know you can usually, if you're good in one trade, to some degrees you can parallel your skill, because it's still, there's you still need to know how to be comfortable with tools, you still need to understand fasteners, you still but yeah, trades, it's just a mentality that just because I'm in school, and there's in this college, and I'm looking at some of these guys. They're a handful of them. They're 18, and they got their head on straight. They got, they come. One guy in particular, a friend of mine. He's he's Italian too, and he comes and listening to his stories. It's amazing because he's
That's one Italian
18.
too many, buddy. You can't have too many Italian friends. Us
No,
Italians are fucking dicks.
he's he's 18, and he's telling me about how his uncles, he's got his one dad who learned to become a mechanic on his own. He's got, he's saying that he goes work with his other uncles in construction, and they'll give him projects to do. They'll say, okay, here, you're gonna go, we're gonna give you a project, you're going to lay out build the foundation walls for the slab, the concrete slab, and they let him do it, and they monitor, and then you know, he's 18 and he's been doing this stuff, and now he comes to school and he's like, you can see he's just ready to learn, and he's very professional, and
Good.
and there's a few of them, right? And that type of mentality, by the time he gets to 40, he's going to be a master, and and it's just kind of like he'll never be broke. And the one thing I like about carpentry, from my industry, it's like, dude, I've got master carpenters in my family. They don't have websites and all that stuff. They're just that good, and they're always getting work.
Yeah,
There's
it's like my
somebody
buddy
always
Ron.
coming up to
It's
him.
like my buddy Ron. A lot of like, even not even necessarily trades. Like I have a family friend that's a lawyer. My buddy Ron, who I do a lot of my jobs with, he doesn't have a website. He just gets all word of mouth, and that's kind of the dream, right? So yeah, a lot of people just get word of mouth, don't even have a website.
Yeah, websites have their place, but the only thing I have my own little thing is Google reviews. I kind of find that, to be honest with you, you got to be aware. Like, don't get me wrong. I think, if I had a business, I'd want to have as many 5-star reviews as possible.
Yeah.
But I don't think you should have a business that doesn't rely on stars, because even the stars, buyer beware, because I've gone with businesses that have 5-star rating and I didn't get 5-star.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So,
well, I had a customer recently that reached out, and I'm not going to say the name of the company, but it's a very big company that does lots of advertising. They do commercials. They're like partnered with one of the big contractor guys on TV, and people know this company, but he paid the most for them, and they absolutely botched the job, because a lot of times what happens with these big companies too is that they do the marketing, and then they subcontract to smaller companies. So a lot of times, like I'm finding with customers, if I'm even hiring people, or I tell customers, don't go with the smallest guy there is that doesn't have no insurance or nothing. But you also don't have to go with the biggest, most expensive company. Go with kind of a grade company, because those people are usually going to give you the best bang for your buck. And a lot of big companies, like when I used to work for that filter company, I won't say their name either, and I had a terrible experience. That's all they were doing. They had like 30 offices all throughout North America. They were a big company making millions of dollars, but they had no installer employees. They subcontracted all their installs to separate installers. And then it was a bad system, because they weren't paying the installers very much. And so the turnover was very quick. So after a couple months, they get new installers. It was just a disaster. So yeah, a lot of times these big companies, you're absolutely right. You don't necessarily get the value.
There you go.
Yeah. So I won't keep you much longer, buddy, because I know you got to get going in a bit. But one thing I wanted to hear a bit about, we talked a bit at the beginning of the combo, and I think it's super interesting, is about like your background, like being South African, kind of, your experience with apartheid and all that stuff. I think you were born here, but your dad was born over there, right? So I'd be curious to learn a bit more about, I guess, some stories you've heard from your dad and why he decided to leave and come here versus go to the States. Because I think that's, you don't meet many South Africans here. So it's kind of cool to hear a bit about that history.
Well, South Africans are very dysfunctional. And I
Just
say
like
that
Italians.
because, no, not because apartheid, the mentality of apartheid fucked up many people.
And explain, sorry, I think a lot of people even don't really know what apartheid is. So can you explain that, what apartheid is?
Apartheid is a system that was voted in, I believe, in the 50s. It was actually, and I don't know, I can only tell you what I can see. It was a system that was voted in to basically keep things, the white man in power. That's really what it was, right? And, these are European white men. Now, to my understanding, so there was the Dutch and the German Boers that immigrated from, I'm not sure if they immigrated or they were kicked out after the war or something, and then they ended up in South Africa. Now South Africa has a lot of resources, and they're big in gold and minings and stuff anyways. So they came there and they introduced the apartheid, which kind of created a bit of a standard.
Okay.
There's negative the standard, and the way it is, it's a ranking system by your appearance, which is kind of not too far off when you think about Germany and how they were trying to create a superior race.
Yeah.
Okay. So it's a system, a ranking system based on your looks, in the sense that it doesn't matter where your family's, like, you could have a family tree that's different, but the lighter skin you are, the lighter eyes you have, the straighter hair you have, the more you're on top of the food chain.
Interesting.
And then as we go down, so say you're light and you have brown eyes, okay, then you're a little less. Say you're white and have curly hair, then you're a little less. Say you have straight hair, brown eyes, but your skin is really brown, then you're a little less, right? So, and then say, you go all the way down to a brother who has curly hair, dark eyes, they're pretty much and I'm not kidding you, they were considered apes.
Wow.
Right. Yeah. And so, what's happened is that you have people that were born and raised in that and lived the system. It was apartheid was inevitably going to fail as the rest of the world progressed, and then and then Nelson Mandela and Desmond Tutu come into play. But anyway, so what happens is that if you have already a dysfunctional family, right, then you have on top, and then you have the layer of the fact that your mom, like my mom came from a family of 9, and so if my grandmother was considered white, right, but then my grandfather was a little on the darker side on my mom's side, and on my dad's side is another story. But anyway, so my grandmother during apartheid, she had, you got to imagine 9 kids, right? And then so now one of them's sick and you have to go to the hospital. So they would all go. My grandmother would have a handful of them, and she's taking the one that needs to go to the hospital and also taking the other ones with them, right? So they would go to the bus. Now you imagine sitting for the bus. Now imagine the bus pulls up, and now you got maybe 4 kids, and so now you're going on board with 2 of your kids. And then you have to say to maybe the one younger one, that say, no, you got to wait for the bus that's coming behind us, because this is only whites only bus, right? They didn't have sit in the back like in the States. They had the white only bus,
Yeah,
And
yeah,
so
yeah.
even if it's your own kid, I don't know about you, but I'm considered. I would probably be considered white if I go on the bus, and I don't care if it's my blood or not,
Yeah.
and I got a little kid, and that little kid is darker than me, and and the bus driver's telling me that kid can't come on the bus because he's dark, I'd lose my shit.
Yeah. And this was in
Right?
like, was this in like the 60s or 70s? When was this?
Yeah, this was in the 60s and 70s.
Oh, wow.
Right.
So not that
So
long ago.
right up to apartheid. Apartheid only got abolished there, I think, in the late 80s, right, or late 80s, or maybe early 90s. That's when they're actually so you have this culture that's raised in this, okay, and so and I just noticed. So yes, some of them come here, but they're angry. They're angry, just no different than you see, the American blacks. They're angry at, being treated the way they were in slavery. Well,
Yeah.
this is different in the sense that in some ways it's different because it's not like they're doing this apartheid in a black majority, in a not like the whites were a minority and they were still doing this shit,
Yeah.
right? So it was inevitable, but it's gonna take. They got this. It's a beautiful country. It's like, and the people, like, visually, they're like Brazilians, man. They're beautiful, right? And it's a mixed race there. But also, and it's a mixed race. But the difference between Brazil and there, when you get a beautiful black African woman, oh my God, it's like that's from the motherland, right?
Uh-huh.
And then, but they take that and they come here and they migrate to Canada. And back in the 70s, it wasn't like it is now. Now it's more and more of the whites here are becoming a minority. But back then when they came here, they had to deal with a lot of racism. And you hear about it and then you see it, and then sometimes people don't understand my background, and then they think I'm white. And then that's the other thing today, in today's world. Just because somebody looks white, you don't know what their family is,
For sure.
right?
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
people act a certain way, and they're usually dicks and condescending, and I just noticed a lot of South Africans, like now the language. This is what I was told from my cousin. The language then was Afrikaans, right? And that's a white man's language. And now I'm told now the younger generations don't want to speak it.
Interesting.
They
Because it reminds people a lot of apartheid. Is that why?
Yes, yes.
Interesting.
It's a white man's language. They don't want to speak it,
So what is
right?
it now that they
So
speak? Like obviously it's English, but is it called something different? If it's not Afrikaans, is it just
yeah, it's
South
Afrikaans, which is
African?
basically it's Afrikaans. It's really more of it's a mixture of Dutch and German mostly,
Interesting.
right?
Interesting.
And most people who are South African who speak Afrikaans can understand Dutch and German. And for most people who don't know the South African accent, they don't understand. They try to coin it with Australian, and then they usually Australian and South African are way different.
I can tell
Um,
the difference, but some people I have to listen for like a good 30 seconds, but there's certain words that I can tell. Like there was somebody recently I met and I'm like, I think they're South African. And I personally love guessing people's culture. I think people kind of like it when you know they're a little bit about their culture, right? So I sense his accent. I go, can I guess where you're from? He goes, yeah. I go, he's South Africa. He goes, yeah, absolutely. And we're talking. I go, my buddy Jacques from South Africa. So it's I noticed the difference in the accent. Yeah.
so no, if there's one language that is really similar, one accent that's really similar, it's Dutch. The Dutch and the South Africans their accents are extremely, it's really close.
Okay.
So, but other than
Interesting.
that, yeah. So that's
That's cool, man. So what
South
was
Africa.
your experience from your dad? Like I guess like leaving because you must have heard tons of stories from him. And why did he decide to come to Canada versus like go to the US, for example?
To my understanding, my uncle was already here.
Okay,
So they were sponsored through and then then my dad and my mom sponsored my mom's family to come here. So back then, what they did was, to get the population, there was a representative, an ambassador that would go to different countries, including South Africa, and they would solicit people to come into Canada, right?
cool.
were solicited for a better life, better jobs. Like they were looking for skilled laborers and skilled people to come to Canada, right, and to build the population. So that's how it really started, because I don't know, we don't have the same as the States, and their popularity grew. They had a good base, right? So
It's cool, man.
but there's one thing I learned. So the majority, basically the sum of it is, most, if they're non-white South African, more than likely they've got family that's been through apartheid. Now,
Yeah.
and nothing against the white South Africans, they're not all horrible people, but sometimes you got to keep your eye up a little bit for some white South Africans, because don't get me wrong, I met doctors that traveled the world, and they're white South African, and they're down to earth people. But then I met people. I one time when I talked to a receptionist that worked at FedEx, and she was an old South African woman, and I got into a conversation. She thought I was white, and she was just going on about how the country's gone to shit, and, and how the blacks messed it up, and blah, 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 blah. Just bitter.
Be careful what you say, because, you never know who you're talking to.
Well, the thing is that we're in Canada. We don't need to tolerate your bullshit.
Yeah.
So,
that's why I love, honestly, man, Canada, I think is one of the best countries in the world. Kind of why I started this podcast too. Like, I love talking to people from different cultures and learning about people's story, because, like I said, I was very lucky that I was born here, and the older I get, the more proud I am to be Canadian, because I know, like, how hard it is to come here and start your life over. Like, I think it's silly when people are like, oh, no more immigrants, don't let the immigrants in. It's like, listen, I was talking to my buddy Martin yesterday on the podcast too. He's from Mexico, and I'm going to post that episode as well, and hearing his story. And in my opinion, dude, this country was built on immigrants, like the U.S. too. And they come here, they work hard, they put their head down. Like my grandfather, like a lot of other grandparents and parents that moved here, drove a taxi cab for 30 years and hustled, and just so my parents could have a little bit easier. And then my parents were born here, then so I could have it a little bit easier, because it's tough, man. So I have the utmost respect for anybody that's going to pick up, start their life over, and for their family. In my opinion, like, a lot of the people that come here are my experience, mostly very hardworking.
There you go.
Yeah. So anyways, brother, I'll let you go. I know you got to get going, but thank you very much, man, for being a part of it. I definitely want to get you on again another time, because I think we both are good conversationalists, and we always have easy time talking to each other. So I really appreciate it.
Cool.
Yeah. So for everybody too, I'm going to post your business links in the show notes, but tell people, like, your social media and your business name, so if people are looking for awnings or any business, that we can send it your way.
Sure. My awning installation company is called, which is turning into more of a construction company, it's installersofcoolness.com. My corporation is Unafraid Designs. But yeah, I'm going right now. It's Installers of Coolness is my main key to business. But I'm planning on the branding is going to be changed to IOC Construction. Still same website, and I'm planning on venturing out more into doing certain types of construction. I'm hopefully to become more of an investor and do custom builds.
Good, man. And what's your TikTok? You said you have a TikTok, right?
Yeah, I have a TikTok. I believe it's TikTok. I think it's / Unafraid Designs.
Awesome. Yeah, send me that, and I'll put it in the show notes for everybody. So
okay, cool.
That's awesome, man. But yeah, dude, thanks again. I appreciate it. Thanks everybody for tuning in. Please, if you can, share this with whoever you know. We're trying to grow. Please subscribe, which is a small little podcast trying to kind of spread awareness of Canadian content and grow a little bit. So thanks everybody for tuning in, and we'll catch you next week.
Cool.
Okay, man. Take care.
Take care.
Ciao. Bye.
Bye.